For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Morning, Professor. Welcome.
Morning. Thank you.
What does Numsa's expulsion from Cosatu mean for the Cosatu itself?
A lot of us have been focusing on the implications of the potential departure of Numsa, which is now an actual expulsion, in terms of the political significance. But I think it has a lot of importance for the labour movement because this is a federation of just over 2 million people, and not only Numsa, but 7 other unions, if I count correctly, may potentially leave. And my calculation was about 800,000, but some people say it's 1 million. But it's a very substantial number, and it also may signify that others within some of the unions whose leadership voted for the expulsion of Numsa may also support Numsa. So it's a very, very serious thing for Cosatu. And what I think about is this union, this federation was established after a lot of negotiations from the early 80s, early 1980s, between different unions who had different viewpoints on various things. It took a lot of trouble to build and establish this union. And the type of leaders who did that at that time would not have allowed this type of thing to happen without a lot of efforts to keep Numsa within the fold. I think all the great leaders in South African liberation history, Chief Luthuli, Mandela, Sisulu, Gomomo, Bagai, all of these people were unifiers. Before the PAC left the ANC, Luthuli spent many, many hours talking to them to try and get them to stay within the ANC. Now, there was no effort on the side of those who voted to get Numsa out. They had no intentions of trying to keep Numsa in the federation. The reports seem to suggest that Numsa came with a 3-hour presentation, and there was no engagement with that. There was no engagement. They didn't contradict, they didn't discuss, they didn't debate. They just voted, and they just came there to vote Numsa out. Now, people who witnessed the birth of Cosatu, people who were involved in the birth of Cosatu, like J. Naidu and others, are very upset because they believe correctly, I think, that Cosatu is a national asset in the sense that a huge labour federation has been run down in recent years. So it's not like surprising that this has happened because it's been run down, because it has become, in the eyes of many, a sort of labour desk of the ANC. And because of this, the asset is not treated with the respect that it deserves, and consequently, they are allowed Numsa to go just like that. Now, what's also important for the Cosatu as a federation is that the unions that have sided with Numsa are mainly shop floor workers like FAWU. Not all, some are public sector unions, but the majority of unions who remain in Cosatu, who voted for the expulsion of Numsa, are public sector unions with the exception of NUM and one or two others. Now, Num is on the decline, we know, but what it means is that Cosatu of today is not of the same character of the Cosatu that was founded, but this has been happening for some years. But I think it's going to be even more pronounced when you have a union of the size and the discipline and the organizational capacity of Numsa being expelled. One thing about Numsa is that from its earliest days, even before it was Numsa, when most of them were in MAU, Metal and Allied Workers Union, is that they knew how to organize, and they were very shop floor oriented. So that when you lose that, you're losing something very significant out of the character of Cosatu. So I think that people have been very irresponsible. They have not, or let's say they've been responsible to their own interests, because they see nowadays that being in leadership is a career path to a position in the ANC and things like that. Consequently, they have not been thinking of the long-term future of Cosatu as a labor federation.
And what effect do you think this will have politically?
In the first place, the instability of Cosatu affects ANC in the sense that leading figures in ANC branches have tended to be Cosatu office bearers or shop stewards, and they've been very involved in the branch life of the ANC, maybe not now, but in the past, and in elections. They've been very involved, and I believe that they were very involved in some of the elections that took place in 2014. That's not to say that every Numsa person will not vote ANC, because many of them, despite the decision not to support the ANC with funds and so forth, as individuals, they may well vote ANC. But nevertheless, there is this instability, there is this potential, not only for Numsa, but for other unions to withdraw from Cosatu and to definitely withdraw support from the ANC. So that is a problem for the ANC. But what its overall political significance will be, even if the ANC is weakened, is something that we have to evaluate in terms of what is the character of a political movement that is needed in South Africa today. Now, if one is concerned about South Africa today, one has to ask, what are the ways in which the Zuma-led ANC and government is causing hardship to the people of South Africa? And then ask oneself, what type of movement can respond to these forms of hardship and try to set the country on a road that I would call an emancipatory road? And I would identify the lawlessness, the disrespectful constitutionalism of the Zuma-led ANC, the intolerance of debate, the suppression of a culture of debate, the corruption, the malgovernance, the failure to have clean audits in all but about 10% of the municipalities in the country, as well as, that's at the bottom, but as well as we know very well, the failure to account at the national level for the Nkandla spending and a number of other actions. So you need a broad, to encompass the type of issues that I'm referring to. You're not really referring only to the working class. So the working class is suffering from continued exploitation by capitalism and continued reproduction of some of the patterns of apartheid which made it difficult for the working class. But the shack dwellers are not the organized working class. The people who are kicked out illegally out of their shacks are not on the shop floor. The women who suffer gender-based and sexually-based violence are not on the shop floor. So what I think is needed at the moment is not only a focus on neoliberalism, which has been part of, or primary part of the rhetoric of Numsa, but in their consultations with communities, they will find that there are a number of issues relating to the hardships that people face that go beyond class. So you need to unite a broad range of people in a number of sectors of society, including sections of capital. Sections of capital, it's not good for business to have corruption. It's not good for business to have patronage. They don't want to pay more for a contract under the table. So it's very important that if the Numsa United Front takes off, that it really goes broadly and that it is left to develop organically from communities' demands, whatever they may be, because that is the way we can tackle the all-encompassing hardships that we now experience under the Zuma-led ANC government. Thank you.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the significance of Numsa's expulsion from Cosatu. Thank you, Professor.